There's a relationship with uncertainty that makes fear impossible. And today, you'll discover how a 9th century Norse explorer who sailed uncharted oceans, survived brutal winters, and built civilization from nothing, developed a philosophy that eliminates anxiety about the unknown completely. Have you ever noticed how some people seem untouched by uncertainty? New job, new country, failed business, unexpected disaster? They move through it like it's fuel, not threat. While everyone else freezes, they act. While everyone else catastrophizes, they plan. While everyone else waits for certainty before moving, these people are already halfway across the ocean. And you know what most people think? They're reckless. They don't care about consequences. They have nothing to lose. But what if I told you that fearlessness in the face of the unknown has nothing to do with recklessness or indifference? What if the reason you fear uncertainty isn't because you're weak, but because you're using the wrong mental framework? The Vikings had no GPS, no weather forecasts, no guarantees. They pushed longships into open ocean, not knowing what was on the other side, only knowing that staying on shore guaranteed nothing. Yet they discovered Iceland, Greenland, and North America centuries before anyone else dared try. They didn't eliminate the storm. They learned to love it. And before he died, the legendary Norse chieftain Ragnar Lothbrok reportedly said, "Do not waste your time looking at the horizon with fear. The man who fears the horizon never reaches it. The man who sails toward it always does." Once you understand the Viking framework for uncertainty, you'll never freeze in the face of the unknown again. But there's a catch. This will require you to abandon every comfort-seeking instinct you've ever been taught and replace it with something ancient, tested, and brutal. Chapter 1. The Awakening. The story I'm about to tell you happened to a man named Marcus, 34 years old, mid-level manager at a logistics company, intelligent enough to be promoted 3 times, but completely paralyzed by uncertainty. The pattern was always the same. Opportunity appears. Marcus researches it obsessively, finds reasons it might fail, waits for more information, waits for more certainty. The window closes. A less qualified person takes the opportunity. Marcus tells himself it wasn't right anyway. A startup invitation. Researched for 6 months. Decided too risky. That startup became worth $40 million. A job offer in a new city. Deliberated for weeks. Chose safety. 3 years later, laid off from the safe job anyway. A relationship that required vulnerability. Kept emotional distance to avoid potential pain. The relationship died from neglect. 8 years of safety seeking. And Marcus had less than people who'd taken risks and failed. The breaking point came during a performance review. His manager said something that changed everything. "Marcus, you're the most prepared person in this room, and the least decisive. You research everything and risk nothing. That's not wisdom. That's fear with a spreadsheet." That night, Marcus searched how to stop being afraid of uncertainty and found a documentary about Viking Age exploration. A historian quoted a passage from the Norse Eddas, the ancient Viking texts. "The cautious man who never risks the voyage lives and dies, having seen only his own shore." Marcus spent the night reading. What he discovered explained everything. He'd been treating uncertainty as a threat to be eliminated. The Vikings treated uncertainty as a condition to be embraced. And they developed a philosophy that made courage not a feeling, but a practice. Chapter 2. The Principle of Frami, Forward motion. The Vikings had a word, Frami. It meant forward motion, advancement, the act of pushing into the unknown, regardless of what waited there. Frami wasn't recklessness. It was a deliberate philosophy. The belief that forward motion itself was protective. That a ship moving through a storm survives better than one sitting still in it. The Norse explorer Leif Erikson didn't sail west because he knew what was there. He sailed west because staying in Greenland guaranteed stagnation. He chose the uncertainty of the open ocean over the certainty of limitation. The Viking worldview was shaped by their cosmology. In Norse mythology, the world ends. Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, is inevitable. Even Odin, the All-Father, cannot stop it. And knowing this, the Vikings didn't collapse into nihilism. They extracted the most radical possible conclusion. If the end is certain, the only meaningful question is how you move until then. They called it skaldskapur, the warrior's art of composing your own story while the storm rages around you. A behavioral psychologist who has studied risk tolerance for 22 years explains, the primary difference between high and low performers in volatile environments isn't intelligence or talent. It's their cognitive relationship with uncertainty. Low performers treat uncertainty as a problem requiring a solution. High performers treat uncertainty as a context requiring action. The first group waits, the second group moves. Marcus tested this immediately. Instead of "I'll decide once I have more information," he changed it to "I'll move forward with what I have now and adjust as I go." Week 1. Applied for the position he'd been researching for 4 months. Got the interview. Week 2. Made the call he'd been planning for 3 months. Got the meeting. Week 3. Had the honest conversation he'd been postponing for a year. Got the resolution. In 3 weeks of forward motion, he'd accomplished more than in 8 months of deliberation. Because Frami doesn't require certainty. It only requires movement. Chapter 3. The Principle of Hugin and Munin, Thought and Memory. 3 weeks into practicing Frami, Marcus discovered a problem. He was moving forward, but chaotically, impulsively, acting without reflection, mistaking recklessness for courage. He went back to the Viking texts and found the principle he'd missed. Odin had 2 ravens, Hugin, thought, and Munin, memory. Every morning he sent them out across the world. Every evening they returned and whispered what they'd seen into his ears. Odin never acted on pure impulse. He acted on informed instinct, the combination of deep reflection and decisive movement. The Vikings weren't wild berserkers who charged blindly. The greatest Norse leaders were renowned strategists. Ragnar planned raids meticulously. Eric the Red surveyed coasts carefully before establishing settlements. The courage wasn't in the absence of thought. The courage was in not letting thought become paralysis. Hugin and Munin working together, gather information intensely, reflect honestly, and then, crucially, set a deadline for the decision and honor it absolutely. Marcus had been feeding Hugin endlessly, obsessively, indefinitely, and starving Munin. He'd think and research and analyze, but never integrate, conclude, and act. He'd never sent the ravens home. So he created a decision protocol based on the Viking principle, the Raven Protocol. Define the decision clearly. Set a research deadline, never more than 72 hours for most decisions, 2 weeks maximum for life-altering ones. Gather every relevant piece of information within that window. At the deadline, the ravens return. Make the decision with what you have. Commit completely. Adjust in motion. The protocol was demanding. It required him to tolerate residual uncertainty, to act before feeling fully ready. But that was the point, because the Vikings understood something modern psychology later confirmed. You never feel fully ready. The feeling of readiness is a reward that comes after the decision, not before it. Chapter 4. The Principle of Drengskaper, Honorable Struggle. 1 month into his new framework, Marcus faced a genuine crisis. A project he'd taken on with his new decisive approach was failing badly. The storm had arrived. Most people collapse under real adversity. They abandon the decision. They blame external forces. They retreat to safety and vow never to take risks again. Marcus found the Viking answer: Drengskaper. Drengskaper was the Norse code of honorable struggle. Not honorable victory, honorable struggle. The Vikings believed the quality of a man was revealed not by whether he won, but by how he fought when losing. The storm does not apologize, reads one Norse proverb. The sailor does not ask it to. He adjusts his sails and continues. A Scandinavian resilience researcher who has studied adversity response for 18 years found something striking. The populations with historically highest uncertainty tolerance, Scandinavian, Icelandic, Japanese, share a cultural framework that reframes adversity as information rather than punishment. They don't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" They ask, "What does this require of me?" That single cognitive shift changes every downstream response. The Vikings lost ships, lost battles, lost friends to sea and war. They grieved. Norse culture had elaborate mourning rituals. But they didn't interpret loss as evidence that the voyage was wrong. They interpreted loss as the price of the voyage, paid willingly. Drengskaper meant, when the storm hits, you don't explain it. You don't complain about it. You don't wait for it to pass. You ask what this moment requires, and you give it. Marcus stopped asking, "Why is this project failing?" and started asking, "What does it need right now?" He identified the 3 broken elements. Fixed 2. Abandoned the 3rd strategically. Salvaged the project to a partial success. It wasn't what he'd planned, but he'd moved through the storm instead of collapsing under it. And the next storm felt smaller because of it. Chapter 5. The Principle of Utangards, the Power of the Threshold. 2 months in, Marcus noticed something unexpected. He no longer feared small uncertainties, but large, life-defining unknowns still paralyzed him. The Vikings had a concept for this: Utangards. Literally, outside the fence. It meant the wild, unknown territory beyond the boundaries of settled civilization. The place where dragons supposedly lived, where the rules stopped applying, where anything could happen. The crucial thing, the Vikings didn't try to eliminate Utangards. They trained for it. Every young Norse man was expected to go Vikinger, to go out, to voyage, to spend time in the wild unknown before he could lead at home. Not because it was safe, precisely because it wasn't. The exposure to genuine uncertainty was considered essential education. You couldn't lead settled civilization wisely if you'd never survived unsettled chaos. They built what modern psychologists now call uncertainty tolerance through systematic exposure, starting with small unknowns and progressing to larger ones until the wild felt familiar. A University of Amsterdam psychologist who has studied anxiety and uncertainty for 23 years explains, uncertainty tolerance is trainable like physical fitness. Avoidance atrophies it. Exposure builds it. The people most comfortable with the unknown didn't start that way. They systematically exposed themselves to progressively larger unknowns until the cognitive and emotional responses recalibrated. Marcus built an Utangard's practice. Monday, one small action with unknown outcome. Send the speculative email, make the unscripted call. Wednesday, one medium uncertainty. Pitch the idea without knowing the response. Friday, one uncomfortable conversation with no guaranteed ending. Weekly, the unknowns grew slightly larger. The emotional response grew proportionally smaller. After 6 weeks, the things that had paralyzed him for years produced the same mild discomfort as checking email. Because Utangards trained the nervous system to recognize the unknown is not the danger. The unknown is just the unknown. What matters is how you move through it. Chapter 6. The Principle of Wyrd, the Weaving of Fate. 6 weeks in, Marcus faced the deepest fear. What if I do everything right and it still goes wrong? This is where most modern frameworks fail. They promise control. Optimize your mindset, build your system, and you'll get the outcome you want. The Vikings made no such promise, and that honesty was the source of their power. Wyrd was the Norse concept of fate, the web woven by the 3 Norns, the fate spinners. Every human life was a thread in their loom, and the Norns didn't negotiate. The Vikings believed that some outcomes were beyond human influence. The ship might sink regardless of your skill. The harvest might fail regardless of your effort. The battle might be lost regardless of your courage. And knowing this, truly accepting it, freed them completely. Better to fight and fall than to live without hope, declared the Havamal, the ancient Norse wisdom text. Not because death was good, because a life controlled by fear of death wasn't really life. The Stoics discovered the same truth 5 centuries later. Distinguish between what you control and what you don't. Focus entirely on the former. Accept completely the latter. A palliative care researcher who has studied end-of-life regret for 20 years found the most common regret among the dying is not regret about failures. It's regret about the things they didn't attempt because they feared failure. Across thousands of patients, the pattern is near universal. People mourn their caution more than their mistakes. The Vikings put it more bluntly. Cattle die, kinsmen die, you yourself will die. But the reputation of the one who was bold, that lives forever. Marcus stopped asking, what if it goes wrong, and started asking, what story do I want to have lived? These are completely different questions. The first produces paralysis. The second produces direction. Chapter 7. The Complete Transformation. 8 months after discovering the Viking framework, Marcus was unrecognizable to the people who'd known him before. He'd moved cities, taken the career risk, built the thing he'd been researching for years. Not because the uncertainty disappeared, because he'd changed his relationship with it. His 5-principle system had become instinctive. Frami, forward motion regardless of certainty. He no longer waited to feel ready. He moved and adjusted. Hugin and Munin, the Raven Protocol. Deliberate reflection with a hard deadline. Gather, think, decide, commit. Drengskaper, honorable struggle. When things broke, he asked what was required, not why it happened. Utangards, systematic exposure to the unknown. Weekly practice with progressively larger uncertainties. Wyrd, radical acceptance. Focus on action, release outcome. Live the story worth living. His colleagues asked, "How are you so calm when everything is chaotic?" His answer: "I stopped trying to eliminate the storm. I learned to sail in it." Chapter 8. The Truth About Fear and the Unknown. Here's what Marcus learned that most people never understand. Fear of the unknown isn't weakness. It's a system design problem. The people who freeze in uncertainty aren't more fearful than those who don't. They're using a mental framework that was never designed for the open ocean. They were handed tools for settled civilization and asked to navigate wild water with them. Modern culture teaches: seek comfort, avoid risk, wait for certainty, optimize for safety. These are excellent instructions for a settled, stable, predictable world. They are catastrophic instructions for an uncertain, volatile, rapidly changing one. The Vikings built an entire philosophy around the opposite premise: the storm is coming regardless. Your only choice is whether you're practiced at sailing in it. A researcher at the Stockholm Resilience Center who has studied adaptive capacity for 24 years found the most resilient individuals, organizations, and cultures share one feature. They don't try to predict or prevent uncertainty. They build robust capacity to respond to it. Resilience isn't the absence of disruption. It's the practiced ability to move through disruption without losing direction. You are not too fearful to handle the unknown. You are undertrained in the Viking arts of forward motion, deliberate thought, honorable struggle, systematic exposure, and radical acceptance. Change the training and the storm changes, from threat to territory. Chapter 9. The Path Forward. Here's exactly how to begin. Week 1. Practice Frami. Identify one decision you've been postponing. Set a 72-hour deadline. Gather information until the deadline. Make the decision. Commit completely. Do not revisit it. Weeks 2 and 3. Build the Raven Protocol. For every significant decision, define it clearly, set the research window, gather fully, decide at the deadline, move, stop feeding Hugin without ever sending the ravens home. Week 4. Begin Drengskaper practice. When something fails this week, and something will, replace "why is this happening" with "what does this require?" Answer that question and act on it immediately. Weeks 5 and 6. Train Utanguards. Schedule 3 uncertainty exposures per week. Small on Monday, medium Wednesday, uncomfortable Friday. Track your emotional response. Watch it shrink. Week 7 onward, integrate Wyrd. Each morning, ask, what is within my control today? Do those things completely. What is not within my control today? Release it completely. Repeat daily until it becomes instinct. After 8 weeks of this system, uncertainty stops being something that happens to you and starts being something you move through. Not because the storms get smaller, because you become a better sailor. Miyamoto Musashi mastered 5 disciplines through pure self-study. The Vikings mastered 5 oceans through pure courage. Both discovered the same truth from different directions. Mastery is not the elimination of difficulty. It is the cultivation of the capacity to meet it. Every time you froze in the face of the unknown, it wasn't because you were weak. It was because you were using a settled world framework in open ocean conditions. The Viking framework is different. Frami moves when feeling frozen. The Raven Protocol thinks and then decides. Drengskaper struggles honorably when breaking. Utanguards trains in the wild, so the wild becomes familiar. Wyrd accepts what cannot be controlled and focuses everything on what can. The storm is already here. It's always been here. The only question is whether you're standing on the shore watching it, or out on the water, sails full, moving through it toward something worth reaching. The Vikings didn't conquer the ocean. They made peace with it. And that peace looked, from the outside, exactly like fearlessness. Now go set the deadline. Now go send the ravens. Now go struggle honorably. Now go sail into the Utan guards. The transformation begins at the waterline.